Hello everyone, this is TheNelston and welcome back to another video. Today I'm here to talk a little bit about how to manage the economy in Wynncraft Guild Wars. If you've ever wanted another desk job after coming home from your 9 to 5, you're in the right place because today I'm going to be teaching you how to ensure that all of your territories after you war are properly defended and cared for. Much like plants and cats, these territories require a lot of special attention and care to make sure that they don't die, and I'm going to make sure that you guys understand fully the specific mechanics as well as some very important strategies for making sure that you succeed. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. Discussing the economy might seem boring, but I assure you as an economics major that econ is definitely not the most mind-numbing made-up subject humanity has ever devised. That honor would go to political science. Ecoing, short for managing the economy, is the practice of setting up territory defenses and bonuses. Before all else, we need to mention the 5 types of resources you will have to juggle effectively to manage your territories: emeralds, ore, crop, fish, and wood. These are entirely isolated from the rest of the game and are only generated and used by guild territories, so you don't need to worry about your claim consuming several stacks of LE per hour. Resources do not move continuously, but rather move through one territory once every 60 seconds, something which the community calls a resource tick. The way that this works is that a territory will, at the next tick, bundle up all of the produced or requested resources, calculate a path either to your HQ or from your HQ, then lock in that path to begin moving resources, one territory at a time, every 60 seconds or every tick. This path has infinite storage, meaning the actual storage capacity of any intermediate territories, or territories along the path, is irrelevant, and the bundled package of resources can only be affected once it starts moving in 2 ways. First, an intermediate territory's tax rate is changed, in which case the new tax rate will be applied and consume a portion of the traversing resources, or second, a guild takes a territory in the path, which will consume the resources moving through it, and if neither happens, the full package of resources will arrive at its destination and be added to the storages. If the route tax exceeds 99.95% or part of the path is closed, a territory will not send any resources. If your headquarters is taken, all territories will stop producing packages until a new HQ is set. In your guild manage menu, hovering over this icon will show you when the next resource tick will take place. This icon will also show you the current usage of resources across your whole claim. If the usage is above 100% in any resource category, that means you will slowly drain or quote-unquote burn resources, while anything below 100% means you will slowly gain or quote-unquote regen resources. If you're at exactly 100%, rub your eyes and check again because this is typically pretty much impossible, but if you are actually at exactly 100%, congratulations, you are in a state of equilibrium where you will neither gain nor lose resources. An important thing to note about this menu though is that you also have to remember that it doesn't account for taxes, which we will talk about in just a moment. After you capture a territory, which is covered in the last video, you will have the option to open up your territories by opening /guild manage and clicking the paper icon. This will show you all of your currently owned territories, and hovering over each piece of paper will tell you some stats about the territory, like the name, resources stored, hourly output, treasury bonuses, and upgrades. If you have Fui.gg, your menu will look like mine, which is nice because every territory's initials and resource produced will be displayed along with info like the type of bonus on each territory. You can also sort by the type of bonus, see a more detailed guild output menu, and search for specific territories by name. When doing this, you can either search for the full name of a territory, but unless you want to summon Rumpelstiltskin every single time you search up half the hellishly long names in this game, you can also use the abbreviation. Personally, I'm a big fan of Rhinebeck East Mid or REM, but I also wouldn't mind if they renamed it to Desert Left Lower Mid or DLLM for short. I want to quickly go over the different types of territories that you'll be dealing with, as well as the concept of treasury. The first type are territories that produce 9,000 emeralds and 3,600 of a single resource per hour. Typically, these are called normal territories. The second type are territories that produce 1,800 emeralds and 900 of every resource per hour. Typically, these are called rainbow territories. The third type are territories that produce 9,000 emeralds and 7,200 of a single resource per hour. Typically, these are called double production territories. The fourth type are territories that produce 18,000 emeralds and 3,600 of a single resource per hour. Typically, these are called cities because only major cities can have this type of production. The fifth and final type of territory is multi-coast, which for some fucking reason is the only territory that produces 9,000 emeralds plus both 3,600 fish and 3,600 crop while not being a rainbow territory. Much like my birth, I can only imagine that this was a big mistake, but it's cool, so we'll let it slide. You'll notice that while I said each territory produces a certain amount of resources at a baseline, this is rarely how much each territory actually produces in the game, thanks to a mechanic called Treasury. Basically, the longer you hold a territory, the more of a production buff it will receive, starting with low, a 10% buff at 1 hour, medium, a 20% buff at 24 hours, high, a 25% buff at 5 days, and then going up to very high, a 30% buff at 12 days. Keep in mind that these percentage buffs are only the maximum possible bonus. What I mean by this is that the farther away a territory is from the headquarters, the lower the treasury bonus is going to be. For example, let's say my HQ is on Path to Taylor and it has a low treasury bonus. This might make it so that it produces 10% more resources, but something like Thanos, which is a little bit farther away from my headquarters, will only get a 4% treasury buff at the 1 hour level. The higher a territory's treasury is, the more bonus resources an attacker will receive from a successful attack, so do keep that in mind. Now that you understand the basics of the resource system, we can go deeper into territory management. Open up your guild manage menu, click on the territory list paper, then click into a specific territory and you'll see a list of 8 icons, which I will go through from left to right. I decided to lie and we're actually going to cover the last icon first. The 8th icon is where you can choose to set your guild headquarters. By default, this will automatically be set to the first territory you take during an attack, but you can move it around unless it is currently queued by another guild, in which case you can't do anything. The headquarters is the most important territory in your claim, as it is where all of the resources of your entire claim are sent and stored. To assist with protecting such an important piece of land, the game offers some very helpful bonuses. The bonus to your headquarters damage and health is 1 plus 0.3 times number of connections, multiplied by 1.5 plus 0.25 times number of externals. This formula is somewhat confusing, so let's break it down. This will be covered more in depth later, but every territory has a number of paths extending out from it which are used to move resources. For simplicity's sake, I will denote the length of one path as a resource tick, or tick for short. Keep in mind, the actual kind of displayed length of a path isn't actually relevant to how much time it takes resources to traverse across that one gap. It can either be really long or really short. No matter what, it'll take 1 minute exactly. Connections are territories which directly touch your headquarters, while externals are territories which are no further than 3 ticks away from your headquarters. Connections are also counted as both externals and cons, which makes them especially powerful for buffing your headquarters. Okay, back to the left-right order. The first icon is the back button. Don't click this. The second icon is the guild tower menu. Clicking this will open up a menu with 4 upgrades, and from left to right, these are damage, attack speed, health, and defense. Believe it or not, what each upgrade does is right there in the name. Damage buffs consume ore, attack speed buffs consume crop, health buffs consume wood, and defense buffs consume fish. These are the buffs that determine the stats you see when you warp into a war, as I showed before. You can see the total hourly cost of these buffs by hovering over the diamond, but honestly, who the fuck cares? The third icon is the tower bonuses menu. Clicking this will open up a menu with a lot of upgrades, so let's go over each of them. In the first row, you have stronger minions, tower multi-attacks, tower aura, and tower volley. Stronger minions buffs the strength of your territory minions and costs wood. Tower multi-attacks increases the number of players the tower can attack at once from 1 to 2, can only be put on up to 5 territories, and costs fish. Tower aura gives the tower a new true damage attack, which resembles the Shaman's aura spell that does between 2 times the tower's minimum damage and 2 times the tower's maximum damage, and this upgrade costs crop. Tower volley gives the tower a new true damage attack, which resembles the archer's bomb arrow, which scales off of tower damage, similarly to aura, and costs ore. In the second row, you have a bunch of buffs which are completely self-explanatory and don't actually affect the strength of your war tower, so you can read these later and figure them out on your own. For example, there is the legendary emerald seeking. In the final row, you have larger resource storage, larger emerald storage, efficient resources, efficient emeralds, resource rate, and emerald rate. Larger resource storage increases the amount of resources you can store in your territory and costs emeralds. Larger emerald storage increases the amount of emeralds you can store and costs wood. Efficient resources increases the amount of resources your territory produces per tick and costs emeralds. Efficient emeralds increases the amount of emeralds your territory produces per tick and costs ore. Resource rate decreases the time it takes your territory to produce resources and costs emeralds. Emerald rate decreases the time it takes your territory to produce emeralds and costs crop. All territories will use 1/60th of the hourly cost per resource tick, and as such, when you think about buffing territories, you want to make sure that your emerald and resource storages are set high enough to store at least as much as each territory will consume, plus how much they produce per minute. Before moving on, one important thing to mention is that people can check the rough level of defenses, both tower stats and tower bonuses, that are applied to a territory using the Wynntils Guild Territories map. The defense level can be very low, meaning no defenses are applied, low, meaning a low amount of defenses are applied, medium, meaning a medium amount of defenses are applied, high, meaning a high amount of defenses are applied, and you guys won't believe this, very high, meaning a very high amount of defenses are applied. Keep in mind, this value will often be overinflated for headquarters. For example, a high headquarters means it's more like a medium, while a medium HQ is basically a low. The fourth and fifth icons show you information about resource usage and production, and supposedly if you click both icons exactly 682 times, it will generate a free stack of LE, but I've never gotten this to work. The sixth icon is the trading route. Hovering over this will show you the route consisting of the paths we discussed earlier from the territory to your headquarters, along with information like the tax of said route. The length of the route, aka the number of territories listed, determines how much time resources will take to get from this territory to your headquarters, with every additional territory adding 1 extra minute. This arises from the fact that it takes 1 resource tick or 1 minute for a package of resources to move 1 territory. Back to the icon, there are 2 options that you can change, one with right click and one with left click. Right clicking the icon will switch the borders between open and closed. As the name suggests, open territories will allow resources to flow through them, while closed territories will not. In fact, if there is no path for resources to flow through due to a closed cutoff, the resources will actually not move at all, and this can often come in handy to avoid getting your resources deleted after an attack, say by closing Savannah East Upper after your Desert HQ is sniped. Left-clicking the icon will switch the trading style of the territory between cheapest and fastest. As the name suggests, cheapest territories will look for the route with the lowest overall tax, while fastest territories will look for the route with the lowest travel time. Holding down Shift while clicking will apply your changes globally, meaning every territory will use the same trading style and have the same border settings. The 7th icon is everyone's favorite icon, taxes. Similar to the trading route setting, this has both a left and right click option with a Shift global modifier. Left click will set the non-ally tax while right click will set the ally tax. By default, both are at 5%, and you can increase the limit up to 60% by leveling your guild. The important thing to remember is that taxes multiplicatively stack on top of each other, and buffed territories will always receive the exact amount of resources they need to maintain the buffs they have. This tax will also apply on any resources being sent from a territory back to your headquarters. As I mentioned before, taxed resources will not be deducted from either your usage or your production. To make in-game alliances and thus commit tax evasion so smooth that even the IRS would be impressed, you can use this rose in the main guild manage menu, which I will come back to later. Now that I've talked about what everything in a single territory's eco menu does, let's go back to the territory overview page. You'll notice that there's a little icon in the bottom left corner. This is the loadout menu and will quickly become your best friend. Here, you can set different loadouts which can then be applied to a bulk selection of territories. You can right-click a loadout slot to edit it, while left-clicking will select it for application. If you feel that there aren't enough slots, you can unlock more slots by leveling your guild. Your main ecoing workflow will essentially be to apply loadouts to all of your territories and then going through to individually tweak important territories as needed. Okay, now that the facts and logic are out of the way, let's discuss strategy. Because the only real way to actually learn eco is by doing it yourself, this video is not a substitute for, just doing it yourself. Something you can either do in-game or on either of these really helpful online tools, both of which I will link in the description. This strategy section will be split into 2 parts. One for applying economic concepts to defending, and one for attacking. First, let's talk about defending. The most important thing to do before all else is to first set your end goal and work backwards from there. To that end, your goals will fall on a spectrum, no, not that one, ranging from maximizing bonuses to maximizing defenses. Most of the time, your priorities will fall somewhere in between these 2 extremes, but there really is no wrong answer, except for the answer which doesn't involve maxing out your emerald seeking. No matter whether you have a large kingdom or just a small patch, the amount of resources you have will always be limited, so spend wisely. Generally, you want to prioritize having defenses which buff the territory difficult to medium on non-important territories, stuff which isn't super critical to a stable economy, having defenses which buff the territory difficulty to high on important territories, stuff which is important for your economy like high value production territories or headquarter connections, and as high as possible on your headquarters without wasting too many resources. One common mistake I see many new economists make is that they don't take the time to regenerate resources, instead opting to immediately get their resource usage as close to 100% as possible. This may be fine if you are under active attack, but the reason you want to regen resources while not actively warring is because you want to have what essentially amounts to a rainy day fund for when you do get attacked. Remember, when you're being attacked, your economy will likely not be able to chug along at full production, so you're gonna need to be running up a deficit or burn economy. As such, you'll need extra resources from your headquarters storages to tide you over, and the only way to have this extra storage is by producing extra during peacetime. Again, I want to reiterate that regeneration should only be a priority when you are not actively defending, because not only is draining to keep up defenses important, you can actually stem or even reverse drain by continuously taking territories to use the captured resources. Finally, sometimes the area that you're holding might not have enough of one or more types of resources that you would like to have for, whatever reason. To address this issue, you can use the tribute system located within the ally menu. The gifting system is something which can also occasionally come in handy, as you can gift your allies some one-time resources to help them set up their territories, and vice versa. War economics often feels like a defender's game, but there are also critical strategies you can utilize while attacking to be more effective. Without understanding how eco works, you cannot attack efficiently. Remember the Q costs and timers that I discussed in the last video? Well, we can use our newfound eco knowledge to complete a more well-rounded picture of attacking. Every territory that your attack has to go through will add 1 additional minute to the total Q timer, starting at a minimum of 2 minutes for a territory directly touching your HQ, and each territory that isn't owned by either you or the guild that you're attacking will levy a minimum 5% and maximum 60% multiplicative tax on your attack cost, making your attack often cost more than just the base amounts. What this means in practice is that whenever you attack a single guild, you almost always want to set your HQ to fastest because your goal is to queue as many things as possible as quickly as possible, and you don't really have to worry about tax. The first thing you want to do when attacking is to identify critical weaknesses in the defender's economy. Are there any resources that a specific claim is short on, like fish and desert? If so, you should consider making a plan to drain a guild by denying them access to territories which produce that resource. Is there an area where you can take 1 or 2 territories and cut off an entire section of the claim, then either set tax to cause a rapid drain, or outright close borders to prevent resource movement? Do your parents love and care about you? These are all critical questions which attackers must consider when preparing to attack somewhere. Next, you want to create a plan for what kind of attack you want to launch. Depending on both the size of your own war team, as well as your targets, you may have to adopt different strategies. If you're soloing or duoing, you can consider a strategy known as snaking, whereby you essentially take a chain of connected territories and move the resources from place to place by setting your headquarters to whichever territory you took last. This is really funny because the 10-minute territory cooldown means that in theory, it is impossible to lose your HQ and you will slowly accumulate more resources over time like a snowball rolling down a hill. The fatal flaw of snaking, however, is that it basically limits you to only being able to take connected territories, a factor which more experienced guilds can easily exploit to shut you down, using 2 main methods: caging and rapid regeneration. Caging essentially means a combination of highly defending territories surrounding your current HQ, as well as closing borders and setting high taxes to prevent your resources from being able to move efficiently. Defenders can also utilize rapid regeneration, which is a strategy whereby they use the short window in which a resource-producing territory is not cut off to gigabuff resource production and essentially slow down or even reverse the rate at which they drain. If you have a few more people but don't have the right setup for harder wars, you can do a wipe whereby you spawn on a territory, preferably a city as the emerald production rate is doubled, and basically spread out to take whatever you can while defending your HQ as much as possible by setting defenses and taking connections plus externals. This is usually the most common type of attack, as it is fairly easy to execute with even a small group of people, and is the most conventional type of warring. Defenders can usually shut this down, however, by simply sniping your HQ. However, if they don't have the capacity or capability to do that, it ends up turning into a war of attrition as both sides settle into siege mode.
Proceed.
Oh, fuck.
Finally, we have the most challenging but fun type of attack, the HQ snipe. This is a strategy where you basically say, fuck draining, we're just going to shut you down at the source. To do this properly, you need a well-trained team and usually at least several consumables. HQ sniping is the practice of taking connections from someone's headquarters and, sometimes a few externals, then outright defeating the headquarters in a difficult fight after you've sufficiently weakened it. There is honestly very little counterplay to this strategy if done right, but what most guilds will do is immediately maximum buff their remaining connections and headquarters if they see someone spawning on their connections. This is also known as 11x 4ing, named after the maximum level for each of the 4 tower upgrades. You want to set your emerald and resource storages appropriately after taking the headquarters so as to not void resources. This is because if resources move into your headquarters and there's not enough storage to store them, the excess which goes over your storage cap will simply disappear or be voided, which itself is actually a strategy many attacker guilds use to delete the resources of a defender guild they have no interest in holding or wiping. This is all I wanted to cover regarding economy mechanics, but I have linked an even more comprehensive, if slightly outdated guide in the description written by the mauled owner Akil FV. As I mentioned before, the only real way to learn is by actually doing eco yourself, so go get some practice. Enjoy Desk Job Simulator, and let me know how it goes. Alright, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video, leave a dislike if you hated it, subscribe for more content like this, and feel free to leave a comment with either a question or a concern, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. Join the Discord if you want more instant communication with me, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.